Welcome to Snippets of Wisdom with your host, Mike Corral and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Snippets of Wisdom is the boomer's gift to the next generation and to the world at large. Dr. Michael J. Murphy and Coach Mike Corral are experienced psychotherapists, writers, and healers who find the greatest satisfaction in sharing the benefits of a lifetime of struggle and learning. Coach Mike has spent decades spreading deep wisdom and supporting youth through the juvenile justice system. Dr. Michael has directed mental health services at many correctional centers and testified in countless trials as an expert in sex-related issues and mental illness. And he was one of the 500,000 humans at Woodstock. So now, please welcome the hosts of Snippets of Wisdom.
And welcome back to Snippets of Wisdom. Thanks for being with us. I'm Coach Mike Corral, integrative hypnotherapist, life coach. With me is Dr. Michael Murphy, a forensic psychologist and therapist. Today, we're talking about something really, really important that has to do with our ability to achieve just about anything. We're talking about emotional resilience and what the role of suffering has to do with emotional resilience. How can suffering actually contribute to emotional resilience? So to begin, we need to find out what is it? What is emotional resilience? What is the definition of emotional resilience? Dr. Murphy, how would you define emotional resilience?
That's really a very deep and complex and robust concept, resilience, to think about what it is and the role that it plays in our lives. I think it's really core to a happy life versus a life of struggle and pain and suffering. How we choose to understand and employ this concept of resilience, psychological and emotional resilience. And the way that I would define resilience is to say that resilience is the capacity to maintain a positive attitude in the face of adverse circumstances. So when we find ourselves in a situation where it seems like uh, times are hard or we're faced with significant challenges, our ability to maintain a positive attitude and a sense of optimism, a sense of confidence with regard to the potential outcome in those situations, that is resilience. And we all have met people, I think, in our lives who have that capacity. They just seem to naturally have it. And when they face hard times or tough times, they persevere, they maintain a positive attitude, and things usually turn out as well as they possibly can for those individuals. We know
Right.
people who seem to be resilient. Then we know people who are the opposite of that. I mean, in situations where they face struggles and challenges, they tend to collapse and be pessimistic, and then they trend more towards a negative outcome. So I think this issue of resilience is just a huge, huge thing that really has such powerful things. And we're going to be chatting about the details of this. You know,
You
it,
know what I noticed? I remember uh, raising my kids. Children, very young children, are more resilient probably than most results. I mean, most adults. And I think it might have to do with the fact that they don't know what is expected of them, and they don't know what to compare themselves to, like we do. And so we have kids facing illness. You got
sorry.
that?
Yep.
It's okay. So
Sorry. Go ahead.
I think that has something to do with the ability to bounce back. Kids just naturally, their bodies want to bounce back. I don't know if you remember raising your kids when they were sick. They didn't want to be sick. They wanted to get up and do the things, and you know they got better as soon as they could. They
Yeah,
bounce
one of the
back.
things that we really want to, that's most important to us as parents is to seek to infuse a sense of resilience into our children. As we raise them up, I mean, how can you contribute to a sense of resilience in your children? And I think, just telling them everything's going to be okay or you're great, or that really does not seem to increase real resiliency. It really, and I say this to a lot of people, the only thing that really improves what we call self-esteem or confidence, that sense of resiliency, is when we have the experience of achieving something that we believe is difficult. So when
Mhm.
we face a circumstance, whether it's to dig a hole in the backyard or playing in a baseball game in which we do our very best and we do okay, when we see ourselves do something and face adversity and succeed, that improves self-esteem, which in turn contributes to resiliency in terms
Yeah.
of the character of that person. So it really is something, the problem is we try to protect our children, and really prevent them from facing danger or risk because we want to keep them safe. And yet at the same time, that can really undermine their
Yes.
opportunity to face struggling situations and adversity that has the potential to really help them
Right.
improve their resiliency. So,
Yeah.
so
They don't develop the wherewithal to overcome uh, more adversity that is guaranteed to come in the future. You know, I think that, yeah, that's a very interesting point. So, how does overcoming difficulty actually contribute? And I know there are specific examples of self-esteem um, and over insurmountable difficulties that really do a lot for our self-esteem. Sometimes things that were not expected, uh, achievements that we make that we didn't expect to make, and yet we did. When we reflect on some of those things, your confidence just goes up. But I think it's a matter of leveraging the confidence that you gain from small wins into greater wins. Uh, for example, winning a race. Sometimes sometimes you're not fast enough or strong enough to be the first one to actually win the race. But if you run the race and finish the race, it builds your confidence to the degree where you think, well, maybe I can actually beat someone in this race next time. What do you think about that?
that's exactly true. I think that, as we were talking about, as we grow older and we face more and more circumstances, we tend to become more confident, if you will. We tend to have a greater degree of resiliency as we become older because literally, when we're, uh, so as you mentioned earlier, when we're young and we really don't have any experience, we really don't know how to survive difficult situations. We haven't had that experience yet. But as we grow older and we face challenges and, whatever may be the outcome, we realize that we can survive situations that are challenging and difficult, maybe even painful, but we find that we do persevere and we do survive. We slowly over time become more and more confident in our ability to deal with negative situations and realizing that we can persevere. So really, as we grow older and as kids get into sort of later childhood and adolescence, they become more capable of internalizing this sense that, hey, I can do it. When times are looking tough, when I may be losing the match, when I may be struggling to be successful at something, I really can, if I persevere, if I believe in myself and believe that I can win, then that increases the probability that I will win. And so you see that development of confidence over time. So, because as human beings, we are ultimately oriented around survival, right? So we're programmed to look at risk, look
Yeah.
for risk, and to be anxious about risk. Oh, this is a dangerous situation. I'm worried that maybe this will really um, have some kind of negative outcome for me. So we scan for those negative situations and learning then how to handle our psychological and emotional orientation to that situation to actually consciously switch to a more positive sense of anticipation for the outcome of that circumstance. So being able to integrate that natural um, survival oriented sort of anxiety that we have, and then learn to integrate that into a sense that I, I, even though there is risk here, if I persevere and I maintain a positive attitude, there's a high probability that I'm going to succeed. And once that happens more and more as we grow older, slowly we become more confident until we're able to, that's how we contribute to our community much more, because we know we can be counted on. For example, I know you over years and years, you served your community as a probation officer for decades of time. So overall, I mean, each day you had to show up at work, you had to do your job, you had to face situations and do the best you can to be of service to others. And you did that, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. So you developed a sense of confidence that you have something to offer people. And you did. And that's a great achievement.
Hmm. It is. I think that a lot of our achievements are relative. And I think we talked about this on a different show where they say comparison is the thief of joy. When you compare yourself to what other people are doing, sometimes you lose the confidence. But if you have your own standard, your own focus, you have your own outcome in mind, and you keep that as your focus, your your performance is going to follow. When I was in high school, I remember I was only 67 pounds as a freshman in high school, 14 years old, 67 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I was 4'7". Um, and when I graduated, I weighed 84 pounds and I was 4'9", not even 5 feet tall. That being said, when it came to sports, nobody even thought that I would be able to compete in anything. And so they had to make, I don't know, the accommodations for me to even participate in sports. One thing I could do was run, and the other thing I could do was wrestle. Of course,
Yes.
I couldn't wrestle until I was in 10th grade, wrestling against freshmen. As a 10th grader, I weighed 78 pounds, and the lowest weight class was 98 pounds. So, needless to say, I had my own standards. I had to think to myself, I'm going to do this because I want to see how much I can accomplish, weighing what I weigh. I want to see how much I can grow. And so there were my own standards that I had to focus on. You know, I never did win a race, but I did almost beat somebody. I came in last every single time. And the funny thing was I couldn't figure it out, but running around the track as I came to the bleachers, the home side bleachers, I got standing ovations. I wasn't winning. I was just running the race. I couldn't even jump over the low hurdles. They had high hurdles and low hurdles. I had to strategically knock over every single low hurdle. And the last race of that season, there was one guy that I passed up, and you should have seen him. He was doing the sign of the cross because he did not want to get beat by the little guy.
Mhm.
Those are my wins. I had to put them in context for myself because comparing myself to what everybody else was able to achieve would have broken me. It would have destroyed me. And so what I'm saying is that we need to keep our outcome, the outcome that we want, clear in our mind. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And that's going to carry all the weight in the world.
Exactly. That is such a touching and moving story about your resiliency. I mean, your ability to persevere in the face of adversity, and how that really gave you the strength to be able to become the man that you eventually became, and to be able to deliver all of the care and service that you gave to so many hundreds of people over decades of time as a probation officer, working in the real tough circumstances of our 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 service system and care system. So you develop that yourself through that perseverance, knowing that you could face adversity, face tough times, uh, and not win the race, but still continue.
Yeah.
And that allowed you to understand that victory and glory and all those things are not the essential core qualities of success in this life. What matters is perseverance, supporting oneself. And we're going to talk a lot more about that after the break. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure thing.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. So, there is a science behind overcoming adversity and overcoming challenges. There's something that happens in the brain. Dr. Murphy, there's something that happens in our brain with neurotransmitter. Just saying it's a neurotransmitter bathes every cell in the body. Tell us a little bit about that, the pleasure and the reward, the high motivation and the dopamine release. How does that all come into play?
Yeah, so it's very important to talk about that, the neurobiology, if you will, of reward and success and trauma, because a lot of people talk about trauma, and trauma is a huge issue these days, I think, for so many of us who have experienced adversity, people who have gone to war, people who have experienced some kind of medical challenges. So I think that um, there's a new way of understanding trauma, because a lot of people have sort of looked at it and come to the conclusion that just talking about trauma does not necessarily improve very much. There's a book out that's come out recently called um, The Body Keeps the Score. And it's a wonderful book about the complexity of recovery from adversity and trauma. So I think it has a lot to do with this issue of resiliency that we're talking about here today. In that, just talking about hard times doesn't necessarily make you better or stronger. But what you really need to do is to start to do constructive work that allows you to feel better as a whole person and to feel more capable. So that means sort of starting to act as if things are better. So we talk about positive visualization. One of the things that we can do when we face a challenge And I actually did this in graduate school myself with regard to my doctoral comprehensive examinations, which are quite challenging. I mean, they get the chance to ask you anything they want to ask you over the course of days of time, and you always have to provide the right answer in the most coherent way possible. So it really is quite a challenge. But one of the ways of increasing the probability of success in that situation was to visualize myself going through the whole process, sitting down for the exam, being faced with the questions, being able to access the information in a positive and spontaneous way. It would just come back to me. I would complete the essays in the most fluid way possible. So, literally visualizing myself in that situation and being successful, feeling positive, feeling relaxed. So, seeing oneself engaging successfully in the challenging behavior, visualizing a positive outcome, really does increase the probability that you're going to be successful. So now, of course, professional athletes all have psychologists these days
Yeah.
that help them to visualize positive outcomes as they face the challenges that they face every week.
So the brain doesn't know the difference between the actual event and a person visualizing it or imagining it because it produces the dopamine as if you were going through those exams, for example. Correct? If you're
That's a great,
visualizing,
yes, exactly.
so you're visualizing it, the dopamine is released in your brain and your body feels good as if it had accomplished the real exam. That's interesting. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's such a deep observation. I mean, when you feel the sense in your gut. I mean, the gut brain is so important. We think about the brain between our ears, but just as important is the brain in our gut. There's just
Yes,
as many neuroreceptors in our gut brain as there is in the brain in our skull. So there's billions and billions of interconnections there that give us the responses and the sensitivities that we have to all kinds of situations. And all of us we can understand this. We've had circumstances in which we feel nervous or anxious or excited or positive or happy, and all those are subtle differences in the response of the gut brain. So uh, when we do actually allow ourselves to thoroughly and coherently imagine or visualize what it would feel like to achieve the objective that we want, to be successful, to have the relationships that we would love to have the environment to live in that we want to live in, to have the work related success that we want to have, to see our children thrive and be successful, loving, caring human beings the way we want them to be. To visualize those things is, as you say, exactly the same as if they were real. I mean, your gut believes that is really happening, and that increases the probability that you're going to be successful in achieving those objectives. It's not easy to do because we tend to be nervous human beings oftentimes, right? So
right.
we tend to worry about things. We anticipate the worst possible outcome and we worry about that outcome. Maybe the bad thing will happen rather than thinking and visualizing about the positive outcome. So it really involves, as you say, taking control of our internal situation, taking
Yeah.
care of our thought room, if you will, and making sure that the events that happen in there that we visualize are the ones that we would like to see actually happen.
Without a vision, the people perish. So if we can't have that vision of what we want to achieve, we won't be able to accomplish what we want unless we can imagine it, right?
Yeah, so actually vision, and it tends to, because we use the word vision, and our vision is such an important sensory modality for us, but we also need to include all the other senses. So the key to the visualization or the actualization of the positive outcome is to imagine, if you will, and visualize how it it looks, but also how it feels, how it sounds, how what the touch is like. Try to address all of the sensory modalities in your
And
visualization.
aesthetic, yes.
Yeah, that's
So,
the key. The touch, the
so the
sound, the
equip,
hearing, the smell, everything. Yeah.
right. So that's a visceral experience. That would become a visceral experience, allowing your whole body to experience it and all of our senses.
Yeah, so we are multisensory beings. We have all these senses, including more sensitive, sort of, these, the imaginative senses that we have, including the literal physical senses that we have. So really making sure that when we imagine the positive outcome, when we create the visualization, that we include all of the sensory modalities, really increases the sense that deep within ourselves, we're believing that it is real. It actually is happening. And therefore, we're going to get the reward, that kind of dopamine reward that allows us to be relaxed and optimistic and confident in our ability to be successful.
As you're saying that, I'm wondering how do our relationships contribute to all of that? Because I know that when you have a community or even a small community, you have people that support you, that contribute to your sense of self-esteem. Uh, how does that contribute to resilience? How do relationships? I know they buffer stress and they foster resilience, but how would you describe that process as taking place with other?
That's a great question. And I think that, each of us as psychotherapists have dealt so many times with couples, say, married couples or deeply involved couples who have come to us with a situation in which their relationship seems to be in conflict. It's in a negative situation. And what is that like? It really is almost invariably characterized by negative expectations. I mean, they're visualizing with each other a negative process between the two of them rather than a positive one where they're really expecting and seeing the other person in a positive way. So the process of psychotherapy really oftentimes is helping individuals in a couple situation to start to see each other more positively and to give gratitude to each other, to make statements of appreciation, to say positive things to the other, to tell the other person how much they enjoy them, what they appreciate about their behavior. Every day they say, in many of the couples therapy training programs that if you make, say, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 positive statements to your significant other every day,
Yeah,
just that process will improve your relationship remarkably because the other person then feels like you care about them and you are grateful to be with them. They feel cared for. And so then they tend to return the favor and start to make statements toward you that are positive and reinforcing. And so you create the positive cycle of interaction that can really lead to a more satisfying and happy relationship.
yeah, that's big. That's
Oh,
really
it's
big.
you.
As
Yeah.
a life coach, I find myself, and I express this to my clients. I believe in them more than they believe in themselves. And I tell them sometimes if you couldn't imagine how much I believe in you, you would feel so much better about the things that you're approaching in your life. If you knew how much I believe in you, you would be going forward with more volition than you are right now.
That's a great point, and we're going to talk more about this when we come back from break. But that, once again, that positive expectation when, that's called ego lending. So we can talk about that
Good
next
idea.
time we come back because it's sort of lending your ego to the client, and that's what a good psychotherapist does, is sort of lend their ego to the client in a positive way so they can slowly learn um, how to have that more positive expectation.
Well,
Sounds
something
great. So we'll look forward to coming back in a little bit. We'll continue this discussion.
Master of words, powerful player, What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
So we were talking about ego lending. How does that contribute to our ability to adapt and find creative solutions for ourselves, Dr. Murphy? I know adaptability is key to resilience, and ego lending is a concept that a lot of people are not aware of and don't even know that it's something that we can do to help us to adapt. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so when we seek help, whatever that means, right? Like maybe we look up a psychotherapist and we go into his or her office and we spend time with them and we wonder what is going on. Are they going to teach us how to live? Are they gonna you know, they're going to tell us what our problems are. They're going to tell us what our faults are. So it's natural to have some anxiety about those initial processes, but really what it is, from a psychodynamic perspective, and that is sort of psychoanalysis, Freud, and all that stuff, is this concept of ego lending. So if you go in for help with someone, you want to let them get to know you, and you want to get to know them to the point where you begin to develop a relationship of trust. So, what is trust? Well, trust is the faith in someone that they have positive intentions toward you and they're going to be of service to you to whatever degree they can do. Their intentions are benign and helpful, and you can trust them to be of service to you, like you were on so many occasions to so many hundreds of people in your work as a probation officer over decades of time. So you created an environment in which your clients could trust you. And that's what created the bridge for your ability to be effective in helping them to be able to become the kinds of persons that they wanted to be able to be. So that is the process of ego lending. So ego lending means that the client or patient can sort of borrow the intact ego of the therapist for a period of time to understand what it means to be a capable and strong person, to see oneself through adversity. The patient knows that this therapist has gone through hard times themselves too. They've struggled. They've had to work hard to become the professional that they are. So they have confidence in the therapist. They realize that the therapist is a person uh, who has the capabilities that they need in order to learn what they need to learn. So they can sort of borrow their sense of security and confidence and start to internalize it for themselves. And that is, some people call it transference, countertransference. You can also call it ego lending when you create that kind of relationship where the client is able to borrow from the therapist a sense of security and safety that helps them to be a stronger and more confident person in their own lives.
So that borrowed sense of ego or that confidence that is borrowed, how can that be leveraged into our ability to adapt, so to speak, and 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 actually overcome, daunting obstacles?
Right. I think that for all of us, it's really natural when we're faced with uncertainty, a lack of clarity. I mean, many of us can do okay if we know uh, that we're very familiar with the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and we've been in them many times before. That's why routine can really be a wonderfully curative thing in many situations. But when we face uncertainty, when we face a sense of ambiguity or lack of clarity about what could happen, then naturally, as human beings, we become anxious. We get nervous when we don't know what might happen in the circumstance. So that's the situation where we need to go through routines and start to use the visualization practices, starting to anticipate that this situation that is unclear, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to anticipate a positive outcome nonetheless. So if we do that and we visualize, once again, in the multisensory way, how is it going to feel? How is it going to look? How is it going to sound? How is it going to, touch, integrating touch in there, all of it, the whole multisensory part you can do, that allows you to begin to anticipate in the most robust way possible that there's going to be a positive outcome. And you really start to feel it in your gut. You feel it when you feel it in your belly, that what it feels like to have this be successful. Then you're really starting to make progress in really increasing the probability that you're going to be successful.
So, if you were to describe adaptability um, in a difficult situation, could you give us an example of what it looks like to be adaptable? How
Right.
would you
So
describe someone who is adaptable?
let's say you're facing a job interview situation or a challenge, you're going to a new school or you're chasing. So it's a situation that you're not familiar with. Okay, so there's what's called ambiguity. So ambiguity is simply a lack of clarity about the possible outcome of a situation. It hasn't happened yet. You haven't done it yet. You haven't done it hundreds of times. So it's unclear what's going to happen. So whenever we face ambiguity, which is something that we face oftentimes, many times every day, and certainly many, many times over the course of our lifetime, we are faced with that challenge to choose to believe that there will be a positive outcome to that unclear situation. So that's the key, is when we face ambiguity, to make a choice to default to a positive interpretation, right? So we don't know what's going to happen when we take the test, when we go out for the team, when we do a tryout for a role in a play, or when we run in a race, or when we wrestle a match, or when we take a new job. We don't really know how it's going to turn out. But when we choose to default to a positive interpretation of that in our own mind, then we start to reduce the natural anxiety that always accompanies unclear situations, ambiguity when we don't know. That's a natural survival instinct. So if all of us could do this, just start to visualize, I'm going to do the very best I can. I'm going to accomplish everything that I can do, and I'm going to be proud of my performance and my effort. Whether I win or lose, or whether I get everything I want, or whether I just get part of it, I'm going to be proud of my effort and my, all of the work that I put into it, and I'm going to be proud of the outcome because I did the very best I can. And then you walk away with that sense of completion and success. So just looking at our situations when we get up in the morning and thinking about what kind of ambiguous or unclear situations will I face today? And it's just spending a minute or two or three visualizing whether it's a work situation, relationship with your kids, just visualizing a positive outcome to that means that you have faith in yourself, your own ability to perform in a way that's going to be most helpful to others as well. So, that's that thing.
I remember in high school talking to my coach, saying, there's no way I could ever uh, beat the fastest runner. And he says, I know, and you know that, and I know that, but what you have that they don't have is endurance. He says, I want you to try out for the cross country team because you know how to pace yourself, you know how to use what you have, and that is key in cross country. That triggered me to look at some of the things that I was not considering. What are other ways that I can win? Maybe not with speed, but
Right.
maybe I can win with endurance by just, holding the line and maintaining my breathing and pacing myself and all of these different things. I think having that ability to adapt and call in other factors that you may not have considered before and use them to your advantage. I think that helps us to adapt as well.
That's a great thing. It sounds like you were able to look at yourself and see the strengths that you would have in your unique situation. You came to understand with the help of your coach, he sort of lent you his ego. Hey, small people sometimes are outstanding long distance runners, and that's really true. Many of the people who have won the Olympics in terms of the marathon and long races like that are people who are not really big. If you think about sprinters, they're usually kind of much more powerfully built, thicker, highly muscled, heavier
Longer
people who can run.
strides, very
Exactly.
long stride.
Yeah. They can run 50 yards or 100 yards really fast, but those small, light people can run for 26 miles or 23 miles, whatever it is, and really leave that sprinter far behind in the long run. And so you start to see that, and with his assistance, you were able to understand and see where your strengths are. So being able to examine oneself and say, okay, what are the qualities that I have that are unique, that will allow me to give as much as I have to give to this world in this lifetime? Am I tall? Am I short? Am I big? Am I small? What do I love to do? Do I love literature? Do I love, music? I mean, what are the things that I naturally have some natural proclivities for high performance in, and start to focus on those? And you did that, and you learned skills that you were able to carry out through your lifetime.
Yeah, I think when people realize or take note of what they have at their disposal, what can they work with? What equipment do I have? What resources do I have? What strength? Which skills? Pulling all of that together and creating opportunities for us to succeed using those tools um, is an important part of emotional resilience and adaptability. You know, what are your
That is
thoughts?
magic sauce, I think. That self-observation and then the reinforcement and self-support that is the core of resiliency. And we'll be talking about that more when we come back in just half a minute or so.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
And welcome back. So, we have been talking about resilience, adaptability, and the role that um, obstacles play and challenges play in our life and helping us to develop our emotional resilience and our adaptability. Um, it's important to realize that acquiring emotional resilience is a journey and it's something that will be with us for the rest of our lives. And once we understand the nature of it, what happens when we become more resilient, we will be able to achieve a lot more than we may have expected. Our level of certainty will increase, hopefully to 100%, because we need 100% certainty to acquire the big goals in our lives. We need to know that we have the skill set that we need. We need to know that people support us and believe in us, um, so that we can be vulnerable and still have confidence that we're going to win. So, Dr. Murphy, what would you recommend as habits worth developing for building resilience and creativity?
So I think one of the key things is to do the the positive visualizations regularly. So, we call it, some people call it meditation. So what is meditation? Well, meditation really is a process of self-relaxation and positive visualization. So usually if you're meditating, you may use some kind of mantra or some kind of statement that can be a positive and self-supporting statement. I will be successful in all of the things I will do. I will contribute as much as I can to my loved ones and the lives of all who come in contact with me. Some kind of statement like that that we can make over and over again that allows us to um, have more of a sense of confidence and a positive visualization with regard to the challenges that we face. So I think that's, and making that multisensory, as we talked again, to think about how we would feel, how it would smell, how it would look, what our thoughts would be. The more robust and comprehensive we can make that visualization, the more likely it's going to change our internal state. So from one of anxiety and worry and negative anticipation to one of positive contentment and feeling of the positive expectation of success.
Beautiful, beautiful, well said. So I want to thank you, Dr. Murphy, for your contribution and your insights, your expertise. If if you have found value in today's episode, please like and subscribe to our channel. I'd like also to invite you to visit www.olcp.life for a free life coaching session or free discovery session. You can also call 774-519-5406 and make an appointment for your free consultation. Dr. Murphy, can you please let our listeners know how to get a hold of you and where they can find more information about your work?
Yeah, it's so great that you're accessible with all the years of experience and the wisdom that you bring to the service of your clients, Coach Mike.
Thank
Just a
you.
wonderful thing that you put out there that I think, has helped so many and will help so many in the future. So in terms of my stuff, I have a book called Opioid Odyssey. It is available on Amazon. So if you go on Amazon and you just type in Opioid Odyssey, it's a book about recovery, which is an example of facing adversity, like we've been talking about today, and successfully leading a life that is healthy and one that is characterized by recovery. So that book is so I call it a happy opioid crisis book. It's about positive outcomes. I mean, people who have suffered from addiction and had a successful life, gone on to live and thrive and contribute to their families and their communities in a really positive way. So that's available on Amazon. I also have a website, psychologicalinvestigations.com, psychologicalinvestigations, plural.com. And so if you go there to Psychological Investigations, you'll find that you can access all of these podcasts. You can look at them again. They're available on that website to examine at any time you want to. And also, there's a bunch of stories and other sorts of writings that I have put on the website. So there also is clear information there about how to reach me. My email and my phone number. So if people would like to have direct contact, they certainly can do that as well.
Thank you very much. And thank you all. Stay with us. Come back and see us next time. Have a great holiday. Bye-bye.
This has been Snippets of Wisdom with hosts Mike Corral and Dr. Michael J. Murphy. Tune in and learn about the primary issues facing our society today and find the best chance of securing a stable and prosperous future. Snippets of Wisdom will enrich your life and the lives of all of your loved ones.